Let's let people in. And get a spotlight going. Spotlight. Let people join. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour this week. Good to see ya. Thanks for joining. We have a fun episode today. I'm streaming into you here from beautiful Pacifica, California, and yeah, I'm typically in the Chicago area, but I'm traveling for basically the month of June, and I've gotten a chance to see a good friend of ours named Larry Lovell, who actually lives about 2 hours north of here. He's a piano technician in the Sonoma area, and just doing some other things which are kind of fun. But yeah, I thought I'd beam in here from Pacifica today. It's a lovely coffee shop that I recommend. It's called Soul Grind. They are not sponsoring the program. I probably should have asked. But if you ever get to Pacifica, California, go to Soul Grind. Check it out. It's a fun place. I'm assuming we're filtering out the background noise okay, right? Yeah, not bad, right? Okay. I will soon introduce this program. So some of you guys are seeing this probably on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or Twitter for the first time. So we want to let you know where you're at and what you're getting yourself into today. This is Piano Tech Radio Hour. And what we do is we gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world. This could include piano manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. If you want to subscribe to this program only, which is Piano Tech Radio Hour, it's kind of affordable but fun way to get involved. It's just $16 a month, and you get direct access to each week's private Zoom calls, such as what's going on right now, as well as the archival recordings of over 200 episodes in our member area. You can join Piano Tech Radio Hour at bit.ly/join PTRH, bit.ly/join PTRH. We'll be putting links in the social media if you want to jump in the live Zoom call so you can get a more personalized experience, interact with the guests in the chat, or even bring it up on camera if you got something interesting to say. And then before we introduce our guest for today, a couple more updates. Make sure you go to the podcast, go to pianotechradio.com to check our podcast. That's been really blowing up. Go to our Substack for blog posts about our masterclass content. You can get some useful information, get some previews, see if you want to join the masterclasses. pianotechniciansmasterclass.substack.com. Follow us on social media. You'll find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And don't forget, we've got a convention coming up here, an online convention on Thursday the 20th here, PTMC 24. That's bit.ly/PTMC24. And we've got some really incredible instructors from the industry and a special guest presenter on music, actually, Zen, which you probably might enjoy. I'll give you some more info on that later. But I've mentioned our guest's name for today, so let's introduce him. His name is Zadravec. He is a jazz pianist, saxophonist, and composer whose goal is to create music based on the human experience. Born in Winnipeg, Canada, he studied classical piano from age 5, and at 11 he began studying the saxophone and the flute. He attended York University's jazz program and for his bachelor's degree, where he was the recipient of 2 Oscar Peterson Awards for excellence as a jazz pianist. He earned his graduate degree in jazz performance at Rutgers University. And we'll talk more about that later. It's an interesting overlap. Then currently heads 2 groups, the Zen Zadravec Quartet and his fusion group, Human Revolution. He has also performed and recorded with a number of top jazz musicians and performed on the Whoopi Goldberg radio show, the Wendy Williams show, and the Today Show with Gloria Gaynor. He performs with his jazz groups in the United States, Canada, Europe, and East Asia. As his next project, Zen will be releasing a new straight-ahead jazz CD entitled Human Revolution. Zen, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour.
How are you, man? Great to be here.
Good. It's good to see you. Thanks for standing by during the introductions there. And I made that little note there about Rutgers University. We had an overlap. I feel like we didn't get much chance to interact, but we were both at Rutgers University at the same time.
Yeah, man.
And did you study with Stanley Cowell as well a little bit there, or were you just studying with Kenny Barron? What was who did you study with over there?
Well, on piano, I was very honored to, fortunate to study with Kenny Barron for 2 years. And, the funny thing is when Kenny announced his retirement and they were auditioning different professors, I was the guinea pig for Stanley Cowell, actually. I was the lesson in the big hall. I'm trying to remember the name of it in Mason Gross Auditorium.
Right.
And so it was funny. I played a couple different tunes for him, and it was kind of like a mock lesson. So that was my interaction, and I actually think I did a semester with Professor Cowell. Just to round out my studies. It was I think it was like an independent study actually, but yeah, the bulk of my study was with Kenny Barron. So yeah.
That's great. Fellow Rutgers alum. And were you doing, so at the time you were doing in terms of your degree, it was a graduate degree. Was it a master's, a PhD? What were you doing at the time in terms
No,
of
at the time it was a master's degree in jazz piano. Yeah.
Awesome. Which, as a master's degree, you get a lot of time to practice, if that's what you want to do, I suppose. But,
yes.
Harken back to those many years ago, what did you focus on during your master's studies? It's funny, it probably felt really important at the time, and then you just move on to other things. But yeah, what did you focus on in your master's studies?
In a lot of ways, there were two main focuses. A lot of it was trying to absorb all the content and material from Professor Barron, and he taught a lot about like rhythmic strength, and we're also talking about accompanying musicians. About as a pianist, a jazz pianist, you should be able to have a supportive role, but also spur creatively along. And so I like to think that my comping is one of my specialties as a musician. But in terms of also like improvising, just having a sense of conviction, and a great sense of time and rhythm, and because Kenny, whenever I've heard him, he would like play well, either I'm sure Professor Cowell did the same thing, but we would do duo piano, and his left hand was second to none in terms of bass lines. It was kind of like I was playing with a bass player. He had such great time, and then I think the second thing was like working on composition. Kenny's a wonderful composer, and I learned a lot about how to He said something to me is that if somebody hums your song at the end of a gig, then you've done a good job of creating a catchy song. So that's always stuck with me. So
unless you have some sort of 12-tone composition. Well, yes, I guess that does say it's catchy. But
right.
No matter what. That's great. I mean, this is intriguing me, and I'm wanting to dive even deeper.
Sure.
Stanley Cowell, actually, I remember specifically with Stanley, his left hand was pretty excellent as well. And I remember he had us doing special exercises where we would basically play a whole piece just with the left hand. Get the little bass, melody, a little comping, see everything that you could fit in the left hand.
Yeah.
And I just remember that was a groundbreaking exercise for me. It really opened up these possibilities of, because the left hand, until you start to really work it, it just feels like it's like this limp, kind of like this accidental appendage that you have, really, until you start exploring it,
Oh, no question. I'm glad you said that, because that's actually something I'm working on right now, is that, because I think when I first started, since you're talking about what I was working on, you're right. A lot of it would be just comping in the left hand, taking more kind of tunnel vision about left hand voicings and soloing. But then when you start doing bass lines and shell voicings and trying to orchestrate, it's a different ball of wax for sure. So I understand.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know if you can articulate it in a little bit of time we'll spend on it, but any key takeaways about I guess the comping category? Is there anything that is shareable in a context like this? Where we're not doing a private lesson, principles of of comping, or ways that you found that you like the voice for different, instruments or vocalists, or is it all kind of saved for the lesson room?
No, no, I can definitely. One thing I try to do is, again, not try to impose what I think should be in the music. It's what is the music asking, right? So if I have somebody that's more, say, like a straight ahead player, like a bebop player, my approach will be maybe more kind of like in the middle of the piano, lower, where I'll be playing like. But if it's something more modern, even in that same vein, I might start going. And I'll try to, and again, if there's a bass player, it all depends on situation. So if it's just like two instruments, then I'm going to provide the bass line. But if there's a bass player, I'll get out of the way. I'll the Ron Carter, right? And then and if it's more modern, I'm a big fan of the 1990s resurgence of Marcus Roberts and Kenny Kirkland, so I like to comp high. That type of thing. But then if I'm in a situation with a vocalist, then I try to really be like an orchestra. So I might do something like, try to keep that rhythm for the vocalist to be supported, and try to keep that chord note going. So I always try to be, again, flexible about what the situation is. But in terms of just overall comping too, a lot of the comping that I used to learn from was starting off the Charleston rhythm.
Did Zen freeze?
Is that on his end or my end, Emmerich? Are you having connection issues?
Okay. Oh, it's saying my internet is unstable. I hope can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you now. It
Okay.
said it was unstable for a minute, but it also said mine was unstable. Maybe we're under a cyber attack or something.
Maybe. But I think the last thing I said was just, I try to base my comping off of the exercise that I worked on the Charleston rhythm. So.
Okay. Wow. No, I mean that you were very capable at explaining that. Much more capable than I was even expecting. That's wonderful.
Thanks, man.
And you said exercises. What kind of exercises you said? They're based on exercises. So.
Yeah. So basically,
from Kenny or some other type of resource.
Some of them were for Kenny. Some of them were for guys like Don Thompson in Toronto, Canada. I studied with, and then. So I would, maybe I would do it on the downbeat, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, and then I go 1 and 2 and 3, and I would keep displacing it by an eighth note, and then all of a sudden you start unearthing kind of what you were saying. You start working in the left hand. I started unearthing rhythms, and I was like, oh, I never do this type of stuff where I go, but 1, 2, 3, and then by doing those exercises, I was able to start. I look at I look at this as like I'm learning a language, so I'm trying to expand how I say stuff musically, I guess you could say. So.
That's incredible, eye-opening.
Thanks, man.
Well, how do you approach practicing these days? I know that some musicians kind of just gig, and then that's where they kind of get their growth, I guess. Or do you put in time with building skills these days, or is it more something that is just built along the performance route?
No, I'm trying to shed at least 3 to 6 hours a day, man. I'm trying to still keep that. It's not always easy because I'm married and I have 4 sons and a dog, so it's not always easy to get that in. But my regimen as it stands right now, I can give you like a very brief outline. I do like these whole tone exercises to kind of like basically like, one is like that Chick used to do is like this. And you're doing variations on the whole tone. That's to limber your fingers. After that, I do like a stretching exercise for tenths. I find this is a game changer for me for stretching. And I do that chromatically in major and minor. And then I do Hanon. And I have two sets of Brahms exercises that I love to do. One is this, and then that works on the diminished and dominant scales. And then these are, I think, been a really good benefit for me. They're all based off of arpeggiating major 7 and minor chords. And then of course, then you go on the gambit of the keyboard. Then once I've completed those, I do all my major, minor harmonic and melodic, chords and arpeggios. And then after I've completed, but then that seems like a very laborious process. But once the metronome keeps creeping up by 10 every day, it gets truncated, and then I can get down to more musical things. And then I try to work on a healthy dose of bebop, and then standards, jazz standards, and then of course I'm trying to fit in my originals, because I realized that, I've been kind of like made fun of by my peers, because they say, Zen, you write really hard music, man. So I have to kind of like keep up my own stuff. Otherwise, like, if you don't practice it, you lose it,
Yeah.
and then you have to get back to it. So
Yeah, that's the tough part. When you create something, you say, "Oh, that would sound really cool," and then you're like, "Oh, I gotta play that." Okay.
bro, I on this next CD, and I'm about to release. It's actually it's after Human Revolution. I wrote this song in 15, and wow, that sounds so cool. And then I tried improvising over it, and I felt like a novice again. It was crazy. So I had to it's always a learning experience. So, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. You're clearly diligently growing it every day, and it's wonderful to hear you're working on your compositions, playing them. I was going to ask, how about composing them? Do you put time in your sort of practice routine for composition, or does that come at a separate time when you're inspired or something like that?
Well, I used to be a lot more regimented, believe it or not, where I was like, oh, it has to be this time, and then I thought, well, wait a minute, what happens if I'm hitting some a creative vibe, and so then I'll run on that vibe. But like basically, I write out everything I want to do every day. But if I decide, wait a minute, I'm running on a really good idea, then I'll just say I'll put pause on the regimen and work on the idea. So like a lot of tunes for me are like either like I'll start with a cool like vamp thing or something, and then I'll come up with a melody, But that's the process for me, is that when I write stuff, it's usually it starts off as like concepts that I'm working on in terms of improvisation, and I'm like, oh, this could be actually a pretty hip tune, and then the concept itself, like that I work on, will evolve into a composition. So.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I'm loving this particular interview. We don't always get as much opportunity to have someone go back and forth between talking and playing a little bit, but we were hoping to actually do some formalized playing, like play a piece or at least a section or something. So maybe now would be a good time to just kind of demonstrate. Now we have some context of what kind of music you like to play.
Of course, yeah. So I'll probably just play the melody of a tune that was on my second record. This is called Live, and we're talking about concepts and writing tunes. This one's in 7, and like I said, this one took me a while to kind of get it in my fingers, but I think I got a better understanding of it now. So I'll play it for you. So.
Awesome.
So.
dig it. Yeah. It's cool when you had, so you said that, forgive me for not being able to detect it. That's 15 you said? That's,
No, that one's the 7. The 15 one was this.
okay.
So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But I'm not trying to be
Uh-huh.
like slick and writing it, but it just came, it was actually based off of a vamp. And then I was just playing, that's a perfect example of what I was talking about, is that I would just start with a vamp. And then I'm like, okay, what
Mm-hmm.
do I put on top of the vamp? And then there came that. So, yeah.
Cool, cool. Well, I appreciated the way that, even though the time signature is, an odd signature, it still has a groove to it. Like it makes your body kind of want to vibe to it, and that's pretty incredible to achieve.
Yeah.
You can even see it when you're playing it. You're feeling it's a specific rhythm. That has a feeling to it.
Oh,
Wonderful.
thank you, man. Cool.
Would love to talk a little bit just about the acoustic piano. You have an acoustic piano, which we love, to see musicians enjoying acoustic instruments. What's been your relationship to acoustic piano? Did you get to take lessons on acoustic when you were younger? Have you always tried to have one? Has there been periods where you only had it digital? Like, what's been your relationship with that acoustic instrument?
No, great question. I was very fortunate. It was kind of funny how it came to be. My mom, I was watching, I'm probably dating myself, but I was watching Bugs Bunny when I was a kid. And my mom was like, hey, do you want to take piano lessons? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? You know what I mean? And I was 5, right? So I did, I thought it was just another activity. And then they surprised me. They bought me this beautiful full upright piano, right? And like it was actually, I think it was donated, and it was one of the heaviest instruments I've ever encountered. And I think it was built in 1907. I think the brand name was Bell. But I loved the piano. Like I was enamored by it. Like I just loved the sound production, everything. So I was always on it all the time. And so I've always had an acoustic piano throughout my formative years. And then when I went to college, it was kind of a different thing because you're in college, you don't have a piano, you're in a dorm room or whatever the case may be. So I was always trying to find the best acoustic on campus, and you know how that is too, right? That we would be fighting each other for trying to get the best, go up to the best room or whatever. And so I've always tried to make that a centerpiece of my development because and I have played keyboards and I do play them, but I'm not gonna lie, they're hard to adjust to for me. I think now I'm getting a better concept of, like, I try to pretend like it doesn't matter if it's an acoustic or an electric, I approach it the same way in terms of the way I sit posturally, the way I breathe and play. That's been helping. 'Cause I used to like rely on guideposts with the acoustics, like where the pedals were and all that type of stuff, and I realized that wasn't serving me well. If you're on a gig and there's only an electric piano, the pedal moves, so then you lose all sense of dealing with the acoustic anymore. So I try to now think of like, so when I'm thinking of being at the piano, I try to think about my posture first in terms of just not a fixed statuesque thing, but just distance with the keyboard itself and not worry about where the pedals are because I love Steinways, but I'm a huge Yamaha fan, and I've always wanted to get an endorsement with Yamaha, which that's my goal this year. And but I noticed that the pedals are placed differently underneath, so that kind of I have to adjust to that with my piano concept. So yeah, acoustic pianos are at the top of my list in terms of always trying to, that's the basis of all my playing. Even if I play electric stuff, I'm always trying to make sure that I have a good relationship with the acoustic first and foremost. So that's, I would say. And I'm at a studio that I rent the bass at, but I have a Yamaha C3 Conservatory Grand. It's actually, ironically enough, I played them at Rutgers and I fell in love with them actually. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, great. That's really wonderful, and I love your approach. You're very methodical about everything. From the practicing to the composition to just like the approach to the instrument. It's refreshing. Um, I wanted to mention this. Okay, first of all, you briefly said I would love a sponsorship from Yamaha. Now I cannot. I wish I could be like, oh, you've got a sponsorship from Yamaha. Like I can't, it's not this kind. That's not the kind of program we have. But it
No,
is
no, no.
interesting to discuss this. I would
Yeah,
love to discuss this a little bit.
sure.
Just this concept as candidly as we can, because there are these different brands that have they have their artists. You could be a Steinway artist, you could be a Yamaha artist.
Sure.
Um, Other brands, Facioli, you could probably, some of them are more explicit and um, invest more in the artist idea that they have specific artists. Some of them maybe not so much. Um, but I've there's a book you might be interested in reading it. We had a guest on the show, which was kind of fun several weeks ago. His name is Jim Wilson.
Hmm.
He's a piano technician who moved to LA, back in like the 80s, and quickly got involved with all these really great musicians and celebrities in LA, and then he started doing MIDI installations when it was the first thing, nobody else was doing it. You could install these MIDI adapters into acoustic pianos.
Yeah, yeah.
So through that, he got to know like, Elton John and Paul McCartney, and like hang out with these people and get to know them. But there's a story in the book about Elton John switching from being a Steinway artist to a Yamaha artist, and it's because they really came in and supported him, gave him a piano that he really appreciated at a given moment. And there's a guy named Eric Johnson who was integral in that moment, and he was kind of in that department, concert and artist at Yamaha at the time. He's no longer there, unfortunately. I actually asked him recently, hey, can you help people become a Yamaha artist, Eric? And he was like, I'm not involved enough to help people do that right now.
Sure,
But I
sure.
can tell you, he did, give some advice to kind of, just get involved with a local dealer, or find out the dealer that would be most influential. Maybe it's not your local dealer. Maybe there's another one in a city nearby or something like that. He did say, I think it was him and other people. I hope I'm sharing this publicly. I think it's okay. But I think that if a dealer vouches for you as to be an artist, it holds a certain weight as opposed to just generally reaching out, to the brand and asking them to consider it. So I don't know if there's any great strategies for that, but you said, you're interested in being a Yamaha artist, and I don't know if that helps. You mentioned as a goal, is it a very clear goal? It's just sort of something you've been thinking about, being a Yamaha artist? Any thoughts on your
Well,
end?
no, it's a great question. I think for me, it's more like it's just the environment. Like every instrument I've ever played by Yamaha, like because I play saxophone as well, and I had a Yamaha alto in high school, and then I have a Yamaha tenor, and I've always, I don't know, there's something about the craftsmanship for me anyway. Like now, don't get me wrong, like I play some Steinways that make my heart want to melt. They're so beautiful, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
so rich in sound quality, and so. But I guess to me the standard for piano is, for me anyway. This is just my opinion, humbly, is always been Steinway and Yamaha for different reasons. Like for
Mm-hmm.
classical, I would definitely want to go to a Steinway, but for jazz, I like that brighter sound. And but what I
Right.
noticed though, and maybe I'll you guys can illuminate this for me maybe at a later date, but the first record that I did, and I did it actually at Tony Bennett's son's studio. His name is Dave Bennett. He's a sound engineer, and unfortunately the studio isn't around anymore. But he had a beautiful Yamaha piano, but it didn't sound like a traditional Yamaha. And I asked, well, why is that? And the piano tech. I did actually, since we're talking about this, I just realized this now. He told me that I don't know if I forgive me if I'm saying this wrong for all the piano techs out there,
Fine.
but
Yeah. Say whatever
some
you say. We'll
it was something
translate.
to do about treating the hammers, right? Because like usually
Yeah.
Yamaha hammers are a lot harder, and he
Mm-hmm.
softened them up some kind of way with some kind of a
Mm-hmm.
device. And again, you can see that's the extent of my knowledge about piano tech. But the
Mm-hmm.
result of it was it's almost like he took a Steinway and Yamaha and you glued them together, and it was just something
Mm-hmm.
completely brand new. And it blew my
Mm.
mind, just like the sound quality of this piano. It was like it had brightness, but it had a nice roundness to it as well. And so,
Hmm.
but that's the thing. Like I think for me is that I've always had an affinity for anything Yamaha. I have a Yamaha Motif ES8, and I have Yamaha instruments. But I think it's just I want to be in that environment because why? Because those instruments help me create the best. That's why I want to be endorsed by them. Really, it's not to go, hey, look at me, I'm endorsed. It's more like I like being around musicians that I really like to be creative with, but also too, like
Hmm.
any kind of companies that promote instruments that help me become creative. I want to be affiliated with that. So it's more of that from that
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. Interestingly, on this topic too, we had a guy. He won a Latin Grammy recently,
Great,
and his name's Christian Benitez. He's from Venezuela,
wonderful.
classical musician,
Hmm.
but does some interesting, crossover stuff. But apparently, I'm just realizing this. Steinway has like a record label,
I didn't know
and I
that.
believe, yeah, and I believe what happened, and I may be getting this wrong, but I think I'm getting it right. I believe what happened with that particular Grammy is he recorded on the Steinway record label, in addition to being a Steinway artist. And I want to say that it was a unique occurrence, like the Steinway record label is getting the Grammy, right, for his music.
Oh
That just
wow.
made me
Okay.
think. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I'm.
Yeah.
It just made me think: are other brands doing that? Like, is Yamaha releasing records, right? Or are they getting into that domain, or is there something interesting about that
Hmm.
in helping to produce the music? Um, have you explored like Fatiolis at all?
Well, I not really. I played on a couple when I was still living on the East Coast. I played a couple. I'm trying to remember what they're called. I think they're called APAP. They were like these once a year things where record companies on the East Coast would like showcase a bunch of artists. So I was playing with this really
Uh-huh.
great jazz Latin percussionist named Kevin Jones, and
Mm-hmm.
the pianos they provided were all Fagiolis. Not my first choice, but I'm sure they're really great. I know that Herbie
Okay.
Hancock is endorsed by them and he loves them. And maybe I just didn't get a good one. So, but
Yeah.
so
And Kawais, have you explored like the Shigeru Kawais at all?
yeah, a little bit. I mean, I definitely there's certain I found really good experiences with the acoustics, and also
Mm-hmm.
the grands as well. So like not when it's like acoustic, the
Mm-hmm.
uprights. Is what I meant to say. Sorry, the uprights
The
and the
upright
grands as
feedback.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. I've had
Yeah.
positive experiences with Kawhi for sure.
Cool. All right. We won't nerd out too much more about piano.
Hey,
piano
that's what I'm here, man.
playing.
It's all good. I appreciate the opportunity. So
Yeah, for sure. And so you mentioned before we started, you and I had a private conversation. You recently moved, yeah? What's or at least relatively recently enough that you don't necessarily have your local technician figured out. Tell us about your geographical journeys here, and maybe we'll see if we can find you a good local tech.
that would be wonderful. I lived in Edison, New Jersey, which is a city neighboring New Brunswick, where we went to school at Rutgers, and
Yes.
so I was based in that general area for about almost 12, 13 years. So I had a lot of close proximity to New York, and I had a wonderful. Um, there were two pianists in Jersey one guy's name was Rick Langmack, and another guy was I'm trying to remember the guy's name, but he did a lot of the tunings for a lot of local colleges, and he was tuning for Bennett Studios. Sorry, I can't remember
Hmm.
his name right now off the top of my head. But since I moved I'm based out of Detroit now, and I live in a town
Hmm.
outside of Detroit called Livonia, in Michigan, and but I'm only 20 minutes away from Detroit. But I've yet to find a
Okay.
piano tech that I really that I like. I to me a piano tech is just kind of like having like a musical best friend because they'll know what you're trying to go for musically, and I really value that relationship because you know like the guy back in Jersey, those guys like they knew what I was looking for, and even too like they would even entertain like doing like work on the hammers, like it wasn't just like a tuning and getting out. They were like, what else can I do to help you sound better on the piano? And to me, that's a very invaluable relationship to have is to have somebody that one is knows what they're doing tuning wise, but they also understand you musically. And So I have one person to follow up on in Ann Arbor, I'm hoping, but he's tuning stuff for this wonderful jazz club called the Blue Llama. And I again, I the name is escaping me at the moment. But if you guys have any suggestions, I would love to hear them for sure.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have them at the top of my head, but we may have people in our community that would be a good fit.
Fantastic.
Definitely some great technicians in Michigan. I was just visiting this guy, Dean Rayburn, who's well known in the piano industry. He creates custom keyboards these days. He also
Oh,
created
nice.
software for piano tuning, but I don't think he's close enough. He's in closer to Grand Haven, which is kind of the other side of the state. But in the same I don't know if you call that latitude something. Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure we'll find you somebody cool. That and yeah, I agreed. I think that um, we've found on this program, not every you have a very it's a wide array of uh, exposures that pianists have to the world of piano
Of
tuning and
course.
technical stuff. Some of them they got a tuning hammer and they can tweak a few notes. And they know the parts of the action even. And some of them are just like I just don't know. It's a wide array, and it goes with all different skill levels and things like that. But what you said is true, and we can develop a good relationship with a piano technician.
Yeah.
Man, there's so many cool doors it opens up. Not only to if you are in the market for purchasing a piano, you find the right piano for you. They can help you. You have an instrument at home, and you know you give it to a good technician, for a few hours, and then you can come back and go, "Oh, I didn't even know my piano could do that." Play that
Yeah.
well or sound like that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then on the same token, I mean, it could go even deeper into you know making a custom sound, for a recording or a performance. Like, hey, we really want this piano to sound this way in this scenario, and that could be really fun if you can build that relationship. So hopefully you'll find that piano tuner love of your life in Detroit. Sorry, it's a little bit odd analogy, but
Right, right, right.
Detroit, Detroit. Now I want to talk about Detroit.
Please.
Um, Such an interesting musical town, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the whole Motown history,
Yeah.
and you've got the context. You're not that far from Chicago.
Right.
Um, what made you move to Detroit? Is it close to where you're from in Canada? I'm trying to figure out what's the draw to Detroit. Something with your partner, or what brought you to Detroit from Edison, New Jersey?
Well, it was really a college teaching opportunity, right? And so I ended up,
Oh,
yeah, and I mean, to be quite honest, though, too, like, I mean, I was getting a little burnt out living on the East Coast. It was starting to get kind of pricey to live, and and as a musician, like sometimes you get caught into taking what are called money gigs or corporate gigs, and all of a sudden you're
sure.
not playing what you love to do, and you're like, oh, this kind of sucks. And so I tried to, like, and I was getting burnt out, frankly, and so I thought, well, let me. I was looking at college teaching positions, and I thought, oh, there's this cool college in Detroit called Marygrove, and so I thought, well, let me apply, and I was pleasantly surprised that they really loved what my credentials, and they flew me down, and I ended up moving, because of it, and then I did that for about 3.5 years, and then but unfortunately the school closed down. It was a small school. It wasn't like a big school like say U of M or like Rutgers,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
but also it gave me a chance to recharge my batteries musically and stuff. And then I met my wife here, and then I thought, well, hey, I'll pitch my musical tent up here in Detroit for and but it's a wonderful musical environment. There's a lot of like history here. There's guys like Marcus Belgrave and Robert Hurst, all these guys like and there's also like like the history of the Jones brothers, Hank Jones and Elvin and all those guys and
Sure.
Thad and so and then the Motown like you mentioned and so and actually I didn't know this but apparently house music was originated in Detroit. I didn't know that. So
Oh yeah.
yes yeah, so there's a lot of great things that go on here and stuff, and I think for me though, like I'm very appreciative of the environment I'm in, but I'm also the goal now for me is to I have roots here in Detroit, but I also want to be flying back to New York in the fall, once a month start playing there again, and I'm looking forward towards that. So I'll be doing a lot more what you're doing. I'll do a lot more traveling. So
Okay, great. By the way, for some reason I had looked it up recently. Okay, there's a couple things I want to mention about Detroit. One
sure.
is a little bit more concrete. Have you seen a documentary called A Band Called Death?
No, actually, I have to check
You've
that
got
out.
okay, so you got to check this out. It's about a band from Detroit. It's like one of the earliest punk bands,
No kidding.
but it was like black guys playing punk, I think, if I remember correctly, out of Detroit. And
Wow.
they're kind of like influenced by rock and stuff like that. But it's a really cool documentary, and it'll give you kind of, it's just you'll probably recognize even more than I did. Oh, like names of places and culture and all that stuff. So I highly recommend that documentary, A Band Called Death. And then do you, since you're from Canada, do you speak French, or is that not the part that you're from?
Oui, je parle de français aussi, but that's not because I'm from Canada. Like, it's funny. I'm very appreciative of the childhood that I had. Like my parents, they really believed in culture. I played sports too, but I was never very good at sports. Like I got good at like I was a late bloomer, I guess. So I got good at football and hockey like in my high school years. But by then, I was so knee deep into music. My dad was like, "Oh, you're not playing football," because like he didn't want me to get hurt. But in terms of the French thing, when I started taking French actually in seventh grade because I didn't know what I wanted to do professionally when I was in fifth, sixth, seventh grade, and so in Canada, like there's a heavy emphasis on like multiculturalism, and so learning languages was the thing back in the 80s and 90s. Like so like if you want to be a well-rounded person in the workforce, so like my parents thought, well, hey, I took Ukrainian immersion, so I speak Ukrainian fluently as well, like when I was in
Oh,
elementary,
wow.
and then I learned Slovenian as well. And then, like my parents are Eastern European. That's where the name Zadravec comes from. It's actually pronounced Zadravec. It means Za means beyond, and Dravec is a river in Slovenia. So my name literally means beyond the river. But I'm not going to say that
Okay.
as a stage name. But the
Okay.
French,
All
but
right.
the French thing comes from me. Like just I was taking it in high school because like we thought maybe what happens if you had a government job. But then once ninth grade hit. I got the bug, man. I was like, I got to play music. So, but yeah, but that's just a
Oh,
little fun fact. So,
okay. Well, it's perfect. It's the perfect setup for what I wanted to bring up, which is very obscure, but
sure.
I feel like we need. So, do you know what the true pronunciation of Detroit is? Then
Detroit.
Detroit.
Detroit. Yeah.
I
Because
feel
like,
like I feel like we need to bring that back. I feel like we need to start calling it Detroit.
good luck on that one. I've tried. No. There's a lot
it's so
of,
I
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Good.
Yeah, no. I looked it up, and maybe you know this, but it's short for. Okay, let's see how you'll pronounce it better than me. Le Detroit du Lac. Aïe, aïe, which basically means the Strait of Lake Erie,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
You can pronounce it better than me, but
Yeah, lac, like in French, lac is actually lake. Lac
yeah,
Erie. Yeah, so le détroit du lac Erie. That's what you would have to use.
Lake Erie.
Basically, yeah, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah.
So I think whenever anybody asks you where you live or where you're from, you should say the full, say the full thing. And then
Yeah.
they'll be like, "What?" And you're like, "Detroit."
Right.
It's just I find it fascinating that sort of Detroit has such a gritty feel to it,
Oh
as
yeah.
a city, and the French pronunciation makes it sound so graceful and fancy.
Yeah, for sure.
um, I'm curious if you'd be willing to play a little bit more for us. I think it might be a good moment before we'll wrap up soon. But is there anything else you might like to share musically?
Well, I mean, I could play maybe something swinging, or do you want me to play a ballad? What are you looking for?
What was the first suggestion you said?
Maybe like some maybe Stella by Starlight, or Ballad Soul Eyes by Mel Waldron.
Yeah. I think Stella by Starlight. That's a classic. I would love to hear. I would love to
Okay,
hear you play Stella by Starlight for sure.
sounds good.
Beautiful, Zen. Thank you.
No problem. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Um, yeah, I'm excited for where you're headed too, and I feel like more wonderful opportunities are going to have to open up for you continuously here as time goes on. You're dedicated, you're talented, um, you're smart, and I love everything that you're doing. So I'm glad we're getting a chance to reconnect and see your passion for playing piano.
Thank you, man. It's been 24 years.
And
I it still blows my mind, man. It's been a long time.
totally. Um, any other aspirations, I guess, for the future and what directions you're headed? Is it recording? Is it is there any other domains you want to get into in terms of musical composition or groups or yeah? What are you aspiring for in the future?
Well, I mean, on the horizon right now, I'm trying to finish up my third record. It's based out of a label out of Toledo right now, and it's going to be called Zadravec: The New Paradigm. And so there's all new, brand new compositions. Like last couple records, I would put standards on them or like something recognizable. And I thought, you know what, this time I'm not going to do that. I'm going to trust the value of my compositions, and I did all originals on there, and so there's a lot of like heavy swing stuff that's based off of like kind of like Bradford Chick stuff or Herbie stuff, but then there's also things that are influenced by like some of my other lows. I'm a big fan of Pat Metheny, so like a lot of the stuff I have has like there's a couple songs with vocalese, so it's like it's the with a male voice singing the melody along with the other instruments, and then so I'm looking to finish that CD and then release it in the new year. And but then also too, like aspiration wise, like I said, I really want to get back to New York and start really getting reconnected to the New York jazz scene as a starting point, and then connect that with Detroit. But I also have roots in Toronto and Winnipeg, because I am from Winnipeg and I went to school in Toronto, and then but I'm also like to branch out to Chicago and Los Angeles in terms of different hubs in the United States and Canada, and get my name out there. I want to really, based off of what I wrote in my bio, I really do want to encourage people with my music, and I'm very appreciative I can play other styles too. So like I'm not opposed to like playing doing like there's I I used to be a huge, well, I still am, but he's a lot older now. I don't know if he's going to tour anymore. I used to be a huge fan of certain pop musicians like Sting, for example. Like I love his style of music, and so if he ever wanted to go on tour, I would go in a heartbeat and play that stuff for sure. And but I'm also looking for other mainstream artists too. I would love to do certain pop gigs too. I've tried to always grow up in an environment where I love all styles of music. Like the funny thing is what got me into music were three things. It was Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, Kinda Blue, a Dave Sanborn record. It was a live record called Straight to the Heart, and Van Halen. So those four things actually were the things that got me into music, and then I was
Nice.
they got into classical music. So yeah.
Great. Well, it's great stuff. We had some interesting guests on here. I can't think of his. I think his first name is Steve, and I can't think of his last name right now for some reason. But he had like a versatile career where he got to play with David Byrne. He did some touring
Nice.
with David Byrne,
That's great.
playing like kind of Latin music, and but also ended up like recording music for like Blues Clues, and like
No
Dora the
kidding.
Explorer. Yeah. I think it was Dora the Explorer. I don't know if Blues Clues, but it may have been both or one or the other. But but yeah, that's cool. Those are great opportunities. Like, and it's not it's nothing unusual to come by interesting things like that. If you're in the right place at the right time. So
Sure.
yeah, that would be absolutely fun. Well, we'll be wrapping up here pretty soon. I'm trying to think about, where we might want to go here just in the last few minutes. I think we've covered a lot of good stuff. In terms of, anything else that you might like to share, maybe you want to play a little bit more, or, a quick thing, or I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be down to play some more if you'd like, or if I don't know, I don't know how interactive this is with other guests on the
Well,
call,
I don't,
or
if people have questions or comments, they usually put them in. Some people just kind of like to hang. If
sure.
anybody does have a question or comment, feel free to pop it in there. We'll just keep a lookout for it. I do see some people look like they might actually be typing something. I don't know. But
Oh, okay.
why don't we do this? We'll see if any questions or comments roll in. But in the meantime, maybe we'll do another quick little musical thing. Like whatever, a personal composition, another standard, whatever.
Okay. All right. You know what? I just played something. I did Stella. So how about maybe I'll do that ballad. How about that? Is that cool?
Yeah, that sounds great. And that's a composition of yours, or?
No, no. This is actually wonderful. It's a beautiful Mal Waldron composition called Soul Eyes.
Soul Eyes. All right, great. Sounds great. Thank you. That was beautiful.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, we did have a comment here, no questions, but this is Zen, Bruce Gibson, piano tech in Saskatoon. Really enjoying this.
Oh,
We've
cool.
got yeah, we've got quite a few Canadian people in our community. There's a guy named Oliver Esmond White. Of course, Canada's huge, so doesn't
Oh,
mean they're your neighbor or anything like that. But
I hope I'm saying this
he's
night. We got a comment from, is it Johan or is Johan Krebs?
yeah, Johan Krebs. Yeah,
Thanks, man.
yeah,
Appreciate you.
Johan. Yeah, Johan says, Zen, thank you, Zen, for your playing and hearing our Let's Start music. In particular, you're talking about the melding of brightness and roundness in piano sound. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We should connect you with some of these Canadian folks in our community. Actually, one guy, it's hard for me to put everybody on the map, but there is a fellow that has worked with I believe worked with Yamaha a bit, and maybe even connected. I want to say, so his name is Wayne, and I believe he had some role in connecting maybe Alicia Keys or something with like Yamaha,
Okay.
or something like that, if I remember correctly. But anyways, we'll try to connect you with some of our Canadian connections. You knew the Canadian Solidarity, get some of those guys on your team. Wayne Ferguson is in Toronto.
Oh, wonderful.
How far is Toronto? Where's Toronto?
It's about 4 hours away
geographically?
from me, actually.
Okay, well maybe we should connect with Wayne. You guys should hang out or do a little call or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, that's about the end of our hour here. So just make sure people know explicitly where they might like to go to find out more about you and what you're up to. Is it website, social media? I don't know. Where'd you like to send people so we make that clear?
I think the best thing that's the most accessible for everyone is my website. It's actually, and I'm seeing it pop up right over there. It's zenzadravec.com. And I try to I'll have to go. Actually, now that I said, I'm gonna have to go update my website for upcoming shows. But I also use Facebook as well, Instagram. I'm learning that I have to also keep up with the times. So now I'm actually, believe it or not, on TikTok. I'm putting up videos there and I'm trying to keep up with social media.
Yeah, tell me about it. It is like chasing something.
It's a whole
Especially
other
when
world,
you're trying
man.
to practice hours a day. You need time for that. You just set up the camera and just film your practice and put it up on YouTube. That we actually had another guest, a young woman who's a classical pianist who's doing quite well. She actually got signed with a promotion, like some really interesting classical promotional agencies. And she's got this huge YouTube following. And I was surprised to see, she just kind of she'll just say, here's me practicing piece, and just kind of tell the story about it and people get into it. But it takes a certain kind of personality.
No, but just to that point, I promise I'll be very brief. I saw somebody talking about this concept. That's it. That's all they did. 3,000 views.
Yeah.
So, and it was literally a 30-second video that got 3,000 views. So maybe we gotta. I'm gonna just speak for myself. I gotta rethink how I do stuff.
Well, I would say, and what I've seen with some of the social media stuff too, to be honest, there's some things which are, in all sorts of domains, which you kind of have to be willing to go very basic.
Yeah.
But that is kind of where there's an audience, right? Like there's actually an audience, quite an audience for, here's a major triad. There's plenty of people who need to learn what a major triad is, and they want like a engaging personality, showing them all about it. I thought of something I just wanted to check in with you about,
Sure.
And so I'll mention it before we roll out. Have you been paying attention to Rick Rubin at all? Is he on your radar, Rick Rubin?
I'm trying to remember.
You should check.
Okay.
You know the name, so check out Rick Rubin if you get a chance.
Yes.
He's doing a lot in podcasting these days. He's a record producer, very unique guy. He was working with the Beastie Boys, everyone from the Beastie Boys to Johnny Cash to,
Wonderful.
all sorts of different artists and different domains. But he's written a book on creativity recently, and I recommend you check out the book too. There's an audio version and a paperback or paperback hardcover, whatever. And what you said resonated with me, and he'll resonate with you as well. You said, you know what, I've recorded the standards, and I said, I want to just follow my voice here for some things. And what's interesting about his perspective is very refreshing, because he's a guy that has clearly fostered the development of a lot of popular artists, that get a lot of popular acclaim, but his attitude in the studio is not like, oh, hey, we're going to make a hit. His attitude in the studio is like, what's your voice? Let's let whatever's inside of you come out, and that's all that we care about. We don't care about what anybody else is going to think about it or whatever. And so it's interesting to hear his perspective, and refreshing to see that there's been quite a lot of success coming out of that as well. So I encourage you to continue to follow your unique voice as well. I think you're a wonderful composer, and I love hearing that.
Thank you so much, man.
All right, we'll do our outro, and then we'll go for the day. So we've reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks to Zen here, Zen Zadravec, for joining us today. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you joined us today by signing up for this session individually, make your life more convenient, subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour, $16 a month, recording, up-to-date session in the member area, as well as automated registration for each week's new session. You can sign up at bit.ly/join-PTRH, bit.ly/join-PTRH. Find the Piano Tech Radio Hour podcast, look us up on the socials, check out our blog, get out to the convention this Thursday by going to bit.ly PTMC24, bit.ly/PTMC. All right. Thanks a lot, Zen. We'll connect again soon. I look forward to keeping more in touch. Maybe we can meet up in person someplace, around the Chicago-Detroit connection. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great week. We'll talk to you later. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, everybody.